Kara-Murza. He's a critic of Putin. He's been sentenced for 25 years in jail. I mean, you've worked with him. What was your reaction when you heard about his sentence?
I mean, it was expected, but still shocking at the same time. On one hand, you know what's coming. Everything is predetermined in the Russian court system. It's not really a free, independent judiciary. And so we knew that he'd be sentenced for a long time. We knew they were seeking to put him away for a very long time. But it's still shocking. This is a person that for many years I traveled around the world with, campaigning for Magnitsky laws. We were together in parliaments around the world, at human rights conferences, at Russia events. And it's quite a strange feeling to see somebody that you know being sentenced and being in the dock when normally it's a two-dimensional thing that you watch other people in those positions. And so it's very sad. It feels very personal this time. And even though I haven't been in contact with him much in the last few years, it doesn't make that feeling any less, because you know that he was motivated for the good of Russia. His campaigning was to rid Russia of dictatorship and to open Russian people up to democracy and to free processes and free media. And to see him go away it's pretty devastating.
And tell me about his charges.
So it's treason. And the treason stems from two main things. Number one, campaigning for Magnitsky sanctions against Russian government officials, which apparently is treasonous because he was trying to get them banned and have their assets frozen abroad. And the other charge is campaigning against the war in Ukraine. He went public inside Russia condemning the war in Ukraine. He informed the public that it was not going to be this walkover that everyone thought it would be. And of course, that was too much because he was a Russian saying it in Russian to a Russian audience. And that was a step too far for Putin.
And recently, the Wall Street Journal reporter, Evan Gershkovich, he was charged with spying. That was this month. And a Russian court has rejected his appeal.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for press freedom in Russia?
Well, I mean, it's the death of press freedom in Russia. I mean, foreign journalists often got a pass in Russia because the authorities felt that local Russians are not reading their newspapers. They're not watching their television stations. So they got away with a little bit more than local journalists might have. But to arrest and detain a American citizen who is there legally on his press pass for doing his job is a pretty drastic step. And I think it should send a shiver down the spine of every foreign correspondent from every country who's currently based in Russia.
And what does this mean for the people in Russia?
Well, it's a silencing tool. The idea is that nobody is protected. Nobody is safe. It's not just opposition candidates who you can tar by saying they're treasonous. It's even foreign people. So if you're a foreign business person and you still think you can get away with your businesses, your trade and your money in Russia, you've got to think again. Because you are simply not safe there any longer. Russia withdrawing entirely from all Ukrainian territories is the only acceptable result for this war. This is not a war with Ukraine. This was Putin's war imposed on Ukraine. So nobody wanted this to happen. In fact, there's been a cataclysmic own goal for Vladimir Putin, who was so against NATO expansion, and yet we've actually seen Finland join NATO and Sweden apply. And so it's just been a disaster for him, not to mention the sheer volume of Russian conscripts who have been killed in this war. He's obviously covering up those numbers, but increasingly villages and towns around Russia are starting to notice that their men aren't coming back, and they're starting to ask questions. And that's a frightening situation to be in, because it means Putin has to cover that up again. And how do we do that? And it might be a military escalation on his part. But on the whole, this war has been an absolute disaster for everyone, but most of all for Vladimir Putin.
Well, Mark Sabah, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.